Good morning, I'm Councillor Nikki Brennan and I will be chairing this hearing of Subcommittee C of the Licensing and Public Protection Committee of Birmingham City Council. Before we start, can you all please mute your microphones for the moment in order to improve the sound quality whilst I outline the procedure. Can you also please turn off your cameras with the exception of the committee members unless you are the person speaking. This is to reduce bandwidth. Committee members will have their cameras switched on throughout the hearing. Could everyone attending today's meeting please put their mobile phones onto silent and ensure that they are situated in a room or environment which is free from distractions or unnecessary noise. Thank you for that. I am speaking slowly and clearly so everyone can follow. It is vitally important, for what I hope are obvious reasons, that those attending the meeting and making representations are able to hear me, members of the subcommittee and officers. Any distractions brought to my attention could result in the meeting being suspended temporarily or to another date and time under the regulation for these type of meetings. I also confirm that this is a public meeting and is therefore being live streamed on the City Council's website in order that the general public can view it, and members of the press and public may record or take photographs except where there are confidential items. Members are reminded that they must declare any relevant pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests arising from any business to be discussed at the meeting. If a disclosable pecuniary interest is declared, a member must not speak or take part in that agenda item. Any declarations will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. Apologies were submitted on behalf of Councillor Mary Locke, and Councillor Phil Davis was the nominated substitute member. Also, members, can we confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of January 2022? Are they agreed?
Agreed.
Can I welcome you to this hearing for an application in respect of the licence for Family Vibes 1456 Pershaw Road, Sturchley, Birmingham, B30 2PH. I'll begin with some introductions. As stated previously, my name is Councillor Nikki Brennan and I'm chairing this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. With me are other members of the subcommittee, Councillor Mike Ward.
Yes, good morning.
And Councillor Phil Davis.
Good morning.
Also present in the meeting are the following officers: Licensing Officer Bapinder Nangra.
Good morning, Chair.
Committee Manager Katie Townshend.
Good morning, Chair.
And Committee Lawyer Joanne Swimpillai.
Good morning, Chair.
I now ask all parties to identify themselves, please, firstly starting with the applicant's representative.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Nick Semper from the Licensing Guys, and I am representing the applicant this morning. Thank you.
We don't have anybody in attendance making representations this morning, so they're not going to want to withdraw their representations as they're not here. So I'll assume that all parties have read and understood the Licensing Committee's procedural rules sent out with the notice of today's hearing. Please note that given the nature of today's proceedings, I may at my discretion amend the procedural rules to reflect the fact that this meeting is taking place online, but I wish to assure you all that any such amendments will not impact on the parties' right to a fair hearing. We'll be using the chat function in Microsoft Teams to communicate. One of the icons on your toolbar is a speech bubble. Click the speech bubble to go onto the chat. If you do not have access to the chat function for any reason, please use the raise a hand function to indicate you wish to speak. That button is usually fourth from the right on the toolbar. You can also, of course, indicate verbally that you wish to speak at the appropriate time. Can you all now confirm that you have access to the chat facility by typing your own name now? Officers will also type their job title. This meeting will not proceed until you have done so.
That's everyone, Chair.
Please keep this chat column open for the entire duration of the meeting in order that everyone can follow the messages being posted in the chat. With the exception of the subcommittee members, please keep your camera off unless you are the person speaking. If there are problems with the bandwidth which cause difficulty with the sound, I might at my discretion ask everyone to turn their cameras off in order that the meeting can proceed with everyone being able to hear and be heard. Does anybody wish to make any preliminary points at this stage? If so, please indicate that you wish to raise a point by typing speak into the chat function or using the raise a hand function now. Thank you. Now briefly outline the procedure which will be following at today's hearing. Firstly, the licensing officer will present the report. Then the applicant will be asked to present their case. We are asking if this could be kept to approximately 20 minutes. Next, those making representations will be invited to make their case. Can I ask that all parties speak as slowly and clearly as they possibly can, because the officers are taking notes by hand for minutes, and the meeting is also being live streamed on the City Council's website. If at any time it is somebody else's turn to speak, please mute your microphone and use the chat function to communicate if necessary. Please note that members of the subcommittee will be able to ask questions at any stage, but will try to do so at the conclusion of each presentation. Cross-examination by the applicant and those making representations will not be permitted unless the members consider it appropriate. Where questions are raised by members of the subcommittee or by those present, they must signify this by using the chat facility set out on the right-hand side of the screen you are viewing this meeting on. The meeting manager will alert me if I do not notice messages in the chat. I will determine verbally or in writing on the chat facility the order in which questions will be dealt with. So at any point in the meeting you wish to speak, please type the word speak into the chat function and the meeting manager will ensure that we come to you at the appropriate time. If at any point you cannot hear or are having problems with your internet connection, please use the chat facility to alert the meeting manager. The chair will then ask the person speaking to repeat what they just said. It is therefore important that you use the chat function as soon as you are unable to hear the person speaking. It may well be that the problem is caused with people still having their microphones or cameras on, which creates interference. So I remind everyone again to please mute their microphone and turn off their camera when they are not the person speaking. Could I point out that occasionally it may be necessary for the subcommittee to take legal advice? At my discretion, I will ask all parties to wait in the meeting whilst members and the relevant officers withdraw to take legal advice using a separate meeting within Microsoft Teams. We will then return to this meeting and continue. Please note that if at any time the live stream being broadcast on the City Council's website fails, I will ask you to all mute your microphones and cameras and to stop speaking until the live stream is restored. If at any point this meeting goes into private session, the meeting manager will pause the live stream. Once the private part of the meeting is over, I will ask the meeting manager to confirm that the live stream has resumed before we continue. At the conclusion of the hearing, I will invite all parties to make a brief closing submission. Can I stress that no decision will be taken until all the evidence is heard? At the decision-making stage, the members and relevant officers will withdraw from the meeting in order to determine the decision. They will go into a separate Microsoft Teams meeting. In the event that the members need to clarify any point, you'll be telephoned by the meeting manager. The members will then make their decision. You'll be notified of the decision of the subcommittee within 5 working days. So I hope that is reasonably straightforward. And with that, can I ask the licensing officer to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Dion Jackson applied on the 31st of January 2022 for the grant of a premises licence for Family Vibes 1456 Persia Road, Sturchley, Birmingham, B30 2PH. The purpose of the report is to consider a representation that has been made in respect of an application for a premises licence which seeks to permit the sale of alcohol for consumption both on and off the premises to operate from 10 AM until 10 PM Monday to Sunday. The premises is to remain open to the public from 10 AM until 10 PM Monday to Sunday. A representation has been received from other persons, which is attached at Appendix 1. The application is attached at Appendix 2, and the site location plans are attached at Appendix 3. When carrying out its licensing functions, a licensing authority must have regard to Birmingham City Council's Statement of Licensing Policy and the guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003. The licensing authority is also required to take such steps as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. The options available to the subcommittee today are to grant the licence in accordance with the application, to reject the application, to grant the licence subject to conditions modified to such an extent as considered appropriate, exclude from the licence any of the licensable activities to which the application relates, or to refuse to specify a person in the licence as the premises supervisor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Would the applicant now wish to present their case?
Yes, certainly, ma'am. Good morning to you all. My name's Nick Semper. I'm from the Licensing Guys, and I'd like to apologise for Dion's absence this morning because he is meeting with the head of the local college about a project to teach young people to cook in a commercial environment. Now, the application is about a small restaurant called Family Vibes. The welcome page on their website says it all, and I quote, "With our family at the heart of it all, we are welcoming you to enjoy authentic and delicious, heartwarming meals with us at Family Vibes." The business is small, food-led and family-orientated, but very professional and successful in its own way. My colleague, who leads for our business on food safety, visited the premises to initiate this application as he has family in your area. And he told me that this is the cleanest kitchen that he's ever been in over 30 years in the trade. So what's it all about? It's really quite simple. Family Vibes would like a premises licence as it broadens their offer to the public, and these additional sales will help them survive the currently harsh economic climate. The restaurant only seats 6 people and wants to sell small quantities of alcohol with substantial meals to eat in or take away. Please note that substantial, we're applying the Oxford English Dictionary definition, i.e. ample and sustaining. The application is only until 10 p.m. at night and is straightforward in its terms and amply conditioned in its contents in my submission. All the usual statutory safeguards and licence conditions are present to ensure that the licensing objectives are effectively promoted and will not be undermined. I'll address you further on the fact that not one responsible authority or ward council has objected to this application a little later, but I will summarise the representation received under the Protection of Children from Harm objective. Mr. Hemming, on behalf of Sturchley School, believes that this tiny concern, even operating under the raft of proposed conditions, will undermine the licensing objectives during the day due to its close proximity to the school and a route home for many children, with a potential, and I quote, like any premises selling alcohol, of arguments or even worse, violence in front of children leaving school at home time. Well, the first point is this: Family Vibes is not like any other premises selling alcohol, but be that as it may. We've corresponded with Mr. Hemming on quite a few occasions. We've asked him to join us on a site visit to inspect the premises and meet the applicant. We've explained that this is an evidence-based decision-making process today and therefore requested sight or knowledge of any evidence that he might hold to support his position. Our correspondence, I'm afraid, has not borne fruit, and we are sadly here before you to decide the matter as a result. And Mr. Hemming, unfortunately, now finds that he can't be with us either today, no doubt for good reason. Now, what stands out most in his representation is the pure speculation that children will be put in harm's way were you to grant this licence. As I've said, this is an evidence-based process, and I'll now explain why it is totally without evidential foundation, that position. Now, the burden is on the applicant, i.e. Family Vibes, and in this case me, to show that the proposals in and around the operating schedule are capable of promoting the licensing objectives. Representatives such as Mr. Hemming, on the other hand, have the burden to show the opposite, that the premises operating under this operating schedule will undermine the licensing objectives, and they have to demonstrate that with evidence. In my submission, any subcommittee properly advised, and I note the presence of your legal advisor, who is very welcome, can only refuse this application if they find that this operating schedule is not capable of promoting the licensing objectives. There's no evidence and nothing is said in this representation from Mr. Hemming that challenges or criticises in any way the operating schedule, the premises, the applicant or the designated premises supervisor. He simply wants a blanket ban on any alcohol sales before 5 p.m. at night, Monday to Friday, seemingly irrespective of whether the school is open or not. Now, our premises and its frontage will be monitored by modern CCTV, and staff be trained and be staffed by, indeed, trained, competent and confident staff. Exemplary due diligence control measures will be utilised, such as the bespoke incident refusals books and Challenge 25 will be applied rigorously. Therefore, all these elements of the operating schedule before you do indeed demonstrate how we intend to comply with every element of Birmingham City Statement of Licensing Policy and its stated policy aims in order to promote the licensing objectives. But rest assured, members of the committee, the applicant will consider whatever further and additional conditions that you may think are appropriate to the grant of this premises licence to this first-class, small, food-led, family-orientated business in order to promote the licensing objectives. So, who else has made representations, or perhaps turning that on its head, more significantly, who has not? The licensing authority, acting as a responsible authority, and here represented by Bhupender, and responsible for licensing across Birmingham City, has raised no representation. The police are your primary source of information and evidence on all crime and disorder and antisocial behaviour issues in your city. Para 2.1 of the Section 182 guidance states that the police rightly should be the licensing authority's main source of advice on crime and disorder, and they have made no representation whatsoever. Environmental health, who deal with quality of life issues in your city, have raised no representation under the public nuisance objective. Trading standards, who deal with underage sales, have raised no representation under the protection of children objective. Building and Children's Services and Birmingham Safeguarding Children's Partnership, both of whom protect children from harm, have raised no representation under the protection of children objective. And Public Health, who deal with substance abuse issues, have raised no representation either. No city or ward councillor, faith or youth leader, or concerned member of the public has made any representation whatsoever. Here's a logical conclusion, that all the responsible authorities are satisfied with the operating schedule that they have seen and examined at great length, and they are satisfied it is capable of promoting the licensing objectives and will not undermine them. Else they are statutorily bound to be here, armed with evidence, to argue vehemently against this application. Clearly they are not. Now, fear and speculation about what might happen, despite the significant raft of conditions offered within the operating schedule, at some time in the future, it is what it is. It is just fear and speculation, to which you should attach little weight, if any, I submit. You will, of course, be reminded by your legal advisor that you must be actuated in your decision-making by real evidence of actual problems, and that speculation of what might or might not happen at some unknown point in the future is excluded from your considerations in the dictum of Her Honour Justice Black in the well-known Daniel Thwaites and Wirral Magistrates case. Mr. Hemming, with all due respect, wishes to speculate on matters that lie within the remit of the responsible authorities, all of whom, may I remind you, have remained silent regarding this well-conditioned application for the reasons I've stated. Now I want to address you on likelihood. Let's break down how likely a real and tangible rise in the threat to children would be if you found yourself in a position to grant this licence today. Mr. Hemming takes the position that were you to grant this application, then children will be endangered. Now, just because this premises sells alcohol alongside substantial meals, it does not follow that there will be an increased threat to children on the street. I'd like you to consider that seriously a moment. Is it really feasible that upon hearing that this licence has been granted to Family Vibes, ill-intentioned and alcohol-fueled people will flock to this area, buy substantial meals alongside copious quantities of alcohol, consume them in the public realm, and then begin to misbehave seriously so as to pose a real and present threat to passing children? Why should this happen? This is going to need to be explained to me in some detail because I cannot see it. Now, it is also ironic that the applicant cannot be with us today, as he is with the principal of Kings Norton College regarding a community project teaching young people to cook in a commercial setting, thus creating career options and life chances for young people in a sector that's been depleted and degraded through the effects of the pandemic. Such is the applicant's commitment to young people, which I would like to put on record. Therefore, you must simply ask yourself, does this application support the licensing objectives? If it does, then with respect, it should be granted. And with all the conditions that are offered, I submit that the operating schedule, the offered conditions and the applicant are more than sufficiently robust to ensure the promotion of the licensing objectives and to ensure that they will not be undermined. Consequently, I respectfully request that you grant this modest application to this tiny, food-led, family and community-orientated restaurant in the terms in which it's been sought. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to questions from members. So, Councillor Ward, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair. I have two questions for you, Nick. The first one is, can you just clarify where the applicant is today? Because I'm not aware of any college called Kings Norton College, and I am a resident of Kings Norton. So
that's a wonderful shout, sir. I understand my business partner has been in contact with the applicant this morning. That's what has been conveyed to me. However, I will get that sorted right now. If needs be, I press for a 2-minute adjournment while I phone my business partner to get the precise location of that. Okay.
Are we able to do that, Chair?
It could be Kings Norton Sixth Form.
It says Kings Norton School. I'm very sorry.
There is a Kings Norton School.
Yeah, it's just texted me. Yes.
There's Kings Norton Boys School and Kings Norton Girls School. But as you were saying, college, I knew there was no such place.
Yeah, 3 times he's texted me now, Kings Norton School. I'm very, very sorry. I must have misread the instruction that was piped through to me this morning when we heard that the good gentleman couldn't be with us. I apologise unreservedly for any confusion that reference is made.
Thank you, Nick. The other matter is I say I'm a local resident. I live in Kings Norton. I live in Cottridge, not in Sturchley, but in Cottridge, which is the next suburb. But I do, because I pass along Pershaw Road a lot, I do know, I have noticed the existence of Family Vibes before this came up as a licensing application, and I can confirm it looks a very bright, cheerful, welcoming environment. It stands out a little bit compared with other businesses in the area. There's a lot of licensed premises in Sturchley, but most of them are aimed at the evening economy, and obviously therefore for adult attendances, adult customers. Family Vibes struck me as being different when I first noticed it, in that they were clearly aiming themselves at families. I'm a little surprised, therefore, to hear of an application to sell alcohol, bearing in mind that alcohol is probably the scourge of families in many ways. More trouble in families, I suspect, is caused by the use of alcohol than any other source of problem. So I'm a little bit surprised to hear that a business aiming itself at families wants to sell alcohol at all. Could I just ask you to comment on that, Nick?
Yes, sir, absolutely. And I take your point. This is a restaurant license, sir. This is not a wet-led premises. Okay, and many places. I mean, my wife is French, and many, you know, over on the continent, you know, kids are present in many establishments where alcohol is served without any issues. So a comparator to in the UK would be, I don't know, say a Pizza Hut or a Pizza Express or a Prezzo or something like that, where clearly children are very, very welcome, and clearly you can enjoy a drink with a substantial meal in a family orientated, community focused, food led, not wet led scenario. That is what we're anticipating here, sir. And I've got to remind you, it's the seating for 6 people. This is not going to be causing a major hotspot on your walks through Sturchley, sir. And it'll be closed at 10 o'clock at night as well. So there we go. Thank you.
Okay. The objector is quite clear that he's very happy for the premises to have a license from sort of 5 or 6 onwards. Is that not a viable compromise for your client?
Well, so it's very difficult because we have tried to engage with the representative on numerous occasions, and you know what, I'm not sure. I don't want to create a lot of heat, not necessarily light, but clearly we've been sharing those correspondence with Bhapinder as part of the process, you know, in his role as the licensing authority. And I'm afraid we've not been able to come to an accommodation. But just saying 5 o'clock at night, you know, because the school kids might be passing with some sort of speculative problem that may arise at some point in the future, but it's just fear and speculation. And secondly, that 5 p.m. start time does not recognise the lunchtime trade. It does not recognise the fact that that school, most schools I think are only physically open for 2/3 of the year as opposed to the entire year because of school holidays and everything else they get up to. I just think it's, bearing in mind the speculative nature of the representation, which isn't supported by any of the other responsible authorities, I just think it would be unduly, I don't know, oppressive, unnecessary to restrict this business in such a way on such a notional possibility that some problem might happen at some point in the future, when this isn't the kind of premises that would. Now, you know, if there are street drinkers sitting outside the school, I totally get that, and that would cause me concern as you know, a member of the community. But street drinkers don't buy their alcohol in Family Vibes. It's not, because they'd have to buy a substantial meal. It is not the way that street drinkers and antisocial behaviour perpetrators act. They're after single sales of high strength ciders and lagers, and they would go elsewhere. Family Vibes would not cater to that crowd, if that's the right word.
Thank you very much, Nick, and thank you, Chair.
Bless you, sir. Thanks for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Davis, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pin down the business model, if I may, Mr. Semper, a bit more. I mean, essentially, this would be a takeaway as well.
Yes, indeed, a takeaway as well. But there are different forms of takeaway as well. You have home deliveries. We have seen massive growth in deliveries businesses through COVID, and the whole nation has changed the way it socialises. You know, what with Uber Eats, well, not with people not being able to go to premises. People have got in the habit of ordering in a substantial meal and having it delivered. So I don't know, when I phone an Indian restaurant, for example, you know, we get the offer of I don't know, a couple of Cobras putting in with the order. And in Italian restaurants, you know, a handful of Peronis put in with a substantial order. That's the kind.
So you see that sort of model applying, because I mean the restaurant function seems to be quite minimal, and particularly if I look at the layout, if that is an actual representation of the layout of the shop, of the restaurant, you've got as you say yourself, you've got 6 seats there. So really, the business model is takeaway, isn't it? in terms of, Fred Bloggs comes in at 8 o'clock, orders some, or has already ordered some jerk chicken or whatever, and a can of beer with that or whatever. Is that the model?
Yes, sir. That would be permissible. I'm not sure what direction Family Vibes is going to be going forward. It would have been really helpful to have the applicant here. But yes, on the face of things, that would be permissible. Yes, indeed, because that's what we're asking for. Yeah.
Okay, that just helps clarify the position. Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just have one question, and it's just, I know the applicant's not here, but I just wondered if you had like a description of what other kind of licensed premises he's run in the past. No, ma'am, I haven't. I don't believe he has, because we are training up his entire team. We do training as well. We're a government awarding body training centre, and we've been commissioned to train everybody up, including the DPS from the start. That's why my business partner went there to meet with them personally, and that's how he got access to the kitchen to look at the models. And like this is what the licensing guys do. We make sure everything is exemplar. That's our business model, for want of a better word. Okay, I don't have any more questions. So if we just move on to the closing submission from yourself.
Yes. Well, I don't want to bore you, so I'll be really quick. All I'd say is this decision is like any other in any other circumstances and needs to be made on its own merits. And I've said all the representation. The only representation leaves the operating schedule and the offer conditions completely unchallenged. I.e., that you mentioned that gentleman coming in at 8 o'clock at night and buying a tin of Red Stripe with his takeout. That's not actually being challenged at all by the representation. Okay, now there are no representations from any of the responsible authorities in Birmingham lying before you, and that is of pivotal importance, because they are the experts in the field, and they've all agreed the condition, not even agreed, they've all examined the conditions offered and are satisfied that the licensing objectives will be promoted and will not be undermined. Now, the applicant's got an established business with a proven excellent track record of compliance and due diligence, and a zero footprint with any of the responsible authorities. That we provided as part of that operating schedule. You've got there a line-by-line breakdown of how the operating schedule of this application is capable and will promote the licensing objectives in accordance with the Birmingham City Statement of Licensing Policy, and it ticks all your, for want of a better word, model conditions. Now, we're not insensitive. We're not insensitive to the fears and speculations of Mr. Hemming, and we don't want any children placed in danger either. Nobody does. Who would? Now, clearly, if he has any issues going forward, Mr. Hemming has any issues going forward, or indeed any of you, then please approach us and we'll address them. As the responsible business and neighbour that we are. We want to work with the local community, not against them. And that Kings Norton School is a good example of us working with the community. Now, of course, in the event that any of your concerns or Mr. Hemming's concerns are not addressed their satisfaction to everybody's satisfaction, then the Licensing Act already gives a very clear route to redress through the review process. But I just need to conclude that this application contains conditions that ensures that the licensing objectives are promoted. I believe, therefore, that the intended operation will be conducted in a manner that fully promotes the licensing objectives, and consequently, again, I respectfully, very respectfully urge you to grant it in the terms within which it has been applied for. Thank you very much. Thanks.
I will now ask all parties to leave the Microsoft Teams meeting, and the members, the committee lawyer and the committee manager will go into the private session while the subcommittee makes its decision. You'll be notified of the decision of the subcommittee within 5 working days. So thank you for everyone's time this morning, and you're now free to leave the meeting.
Thank
Kathy,
you very much indeed.
the live stream, please.